Herb London is here tonight, president of the London Center for Policy Research and author of Leading from Behind, the Obama Doctrine and the U.S. Retreat from International Affairs. All right, good to see you. Can we accept a North Korea that has nuclear weapons but is, to the point of Major Garrett, who asked that question today, contained?
What is the nature of that containment? That's the issue. I mean, the UN has been talking about freeze. And, of course, it's a kind of absurd moral equivalence. But on the one hand, they're saying if the North Koreans can control all of the testing,
right, that
would be one kind of freeze. On the other side of the equation, the United States would not engage in any kind of militaristic activity.
Okay, so how do you define?
I mean, that's a kind of absurd.
So how would you define it then? Because, you know, we've heard containment for years in other contexts, but is there a way to contain North Korea in an acceptable way?
Only if there's appropriate verification. One of the difficulties that you have is for 25 years, the North Koreans have been building tunnels under the ground.
Right.
Even with the recent launches that occurred, these were mobile launchers. Suppose you were to fire your Tomahawks. Do you know whether, in fact, you could reach these launchers? It's not at all clear.
No.
So unless there's appropriate verification, which would mean that investigators were permitted on North Korean territory, it's not likely.
Well, let's say there's not, then. You're right. It probably isn't likely. Give me a better option.
Well, again, one of the things that you're going to do is you're going to freeze all financial assets. And since we're dealing with dollar-denominated funds all through Asia, a lot of the banks that deal with North Korea will be frozen. In addition to that...
So what's he going to do then, he being Kim Jong-un?
Well, Kim Jong-un is obviously going to be strangulated. I mean, he's not going to be able to get the food and the fuel.
I mean, the guy could be on his last breath. He's not ever going to give up these nukes, is he?
Well, you can't be entirely sure about that. One of the difficulties that you have is you're dealing with someone who's very erratic and irrational. You do not know how he'll behave.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, you may be right. He may be. But there also is this school of thought that he's quite rational, and he sees, as people have pointed out, what happened to Muammar Gaddafi, for example, or what happened to Saddam Hussein, and he says that's just not going to be me, no matter what. No matter what.
I mean, there's no question that that's one scenario. There's another scenario which says, you know what, if in fact the Chinese were to decide we're not going to provide 90% of the food and fuel that goes into this country, how do you set off your nukes when in fact you don't have electricity, you don't have computers at your disposal? It's another interesting scenario.
Or so do you just do it because your back's against the wall? I mean, that's why
it's very difficult to say.
Yeah, that's why it's so complicated. But, boy, I don't know. Your best bet on what's next, real quick.
Well, I think the best bet is that the United States will apply as much pressure as possible.
Right,
I think there'll be a lot of negotiations within the UN. I think one dimension of this freeze is possible. Okay. I mean, the very fact that the Russians and the Chinese can at least talk about that side of the equation is interesting.
It's good to talk to you tonight. Herb, thanks very much.
Pleasure to be with you.